Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Coach One Sports. Yours truly, Coach Kevin Bull Jones in the house, here to talk some football this evening. And I got a special guest with me, person I've been trying to get back to talk some football, drop some nuggets about football from his point of view. But more importantly, tonight, we're going to roll up our sleeves and talk about that game that's going to happen in Athens. So I got my special friend, my guest, a mentor, one of the greatest high school coaches to ever do it, Coach Rush Prost. How you doing, my brother?
I'm great, man. Coach Jones, I appreciate you having me on again. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a while, Coach. It's been a while, but doggone it, I just been wanting to, this whole podcast and vehicle for me has been about just highlighting for us coaches. We get a chance to talk a little bit without the media folks all in the face, and we just get to sit down and talk about football and how we look at it and from our points of view. Because of course, most fans and folks that watch these games, they enjoy watching the games, but you and I, we see it from a different eye, a different lens. So I just wanted you to come on and let's roll our sleeves up and let's talk about how this thing is going to happen when it comes to the Bulldogs and those Tennessee Vols. Just right off your thoughts about it, Coach. I want to know, and we'll have some other people coming on soon. They're coming off the field as well, and they'll be joining us. But you get a chance to watch some good football lately. If you've had a chance, I know I've had a chance to see a couple. But your overall thoughts on this season of college football, especially in SEC, and talking about the Bulldogs and Tennessee Vols.
Well, deep down, I'm an Alabama fan by heart, but I had a nephew that played at Tennessee back in 2000, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and named John Probst, is my brother's son. So, sort of been a closet Tennessee fan. For a few years, but because obviously when your family's involved with that university and playing and bleeding and hurting on the field, you sort of end up pulling for them a little bit. I know my brother does too. So, but thinking about the ball game, and first let me retract that and let's say, talking about the SEC in general, I think the conference as a whole is a little better off than it was this time last year from a standpoint. I think there's better teams. I think it's deeper. When you look at last year, it was strictly Alabama and Georgia. There was nobody to compete with those two. I know Texas A&M upset Alabama last year in College Station, but Alabama was head above heels and Georgia was head above heels than anybody else in the conference. This year, starting in the West, Alabama's got competition. And I know Arkansas is a better program than it was a couple of years ago. Obviously, LSU is a better program than it was last year. Ole Miss is hitting his stride with Lane Kiffin. I think the West, Mississippi State's a better football team than it was this time last year. I think the West is better outside of Auburn. That's really it. Everybody else is very competitive in the West. In the East, even more so. With the hiring of Billy Napier at Florida. Florida's a better football team than it was last year, although they're still struggling some. They are better. They opened with Utah, beating Utah was big. And then you throw in South Carolina, they're a 5-3 ball club. I think they're going to be bowl eligible. They're going to get better. Missouri is sitting at 4-4. Kentucky's, got a good program. Things are going well there. So everything's good. And then you come in with this year, obviously, Tennessee is the talk of the town.
Right.
And so the SEC as a whole is there's more parity for the first time in several years, in my opinion.
Right.
And when you boil it down to just Georgia, Tennessee, it's a marquee matchup. I mean, I know LSU, Alabama play this weekend. I'll be watching that game come Saturday night, but
yep.
I will definitely tune in, just like most of the country will with number 1 versus number 3 with Tennessee, Georgia. It's probably the biggest game for Tennessee probably since 1998. I know in 2001, Florida came in ranked 2,
Right.
and Tennessee was ranked 5.
Right.
If you remember back in 2001, that game was bumped because of 9/11. That game was played later in the year, but that's the last big game Tennessee's had. And prior to that, probably the 98 season when they won the national championship. So for Tennessee, it's been a long time to
Right.
play of this kind of magnitude, especially on the road.
Right.
Now, let's go back a few years when Tyler Bray was the quarterback at Tennessee.
Right.
Can't remember the exact year. I went to the game with a bunch of Georgia fans. I was coaching probably 2013, 14, right in there. Jim Chaney was the offense coordinator, and the Georgia Bulldogs won a 53-52 game, a very tight football game. That was a pretty good football game between those two squads. Since there, it's been back and forth, but mostly all Georgia and not Tennessee. But now, with what Tennessee's doing offensively, they've definitely got the best offense going in the country. They're doing a great job. It's a mixture of Art Briles' offense versus, a lot of people don't know that Josh Heupel played at Oklahoma on a national championship team with the Mike Leach offense. So he came up playing in the air raid type offense as a player, and he first went into coaching. That was sort of what he knew. Right. Now, when he went to Central Florida as the head football coach, Coach Levy was with him, who is a phenomenal mind football wise. That's Art Briles' son-in-law. Right. And, Coach Heupel started with, he's really what they're doing now is a lot of Art Briles' Baylor offense that led Baylor to all those things. It's to spread them across the field, a lot of vertical game, a lot of things that can put defenses in a bind. And I think at the end of it, it's been really tough. And then you add the tempo to it, right? Which makes defenses not substitute. And what Tennessee does on offense is they're a 3-wide, 11 personnel team. In other words, they're going to start out with a sniffer back, like a tight end in the backfield, or a fullback type guy in the backfield, or a bigger back, and then a running back, and they're going to be in 3 wide. Now they do get in some 4 wide stuff, but it's out of 11 looks, and I think it possesses a lot of problems because to defenses, although it looks like they're in spread, they really can run the football better than people give them credit for, especially after a first down. And they're in tempo. They're in warp speed tempo. They have a set of plays that they can run after a first down that they don't have to think about. They get lined up fast. They know the formation. They get a snap, and it puts defenses in a lot of problems. So, so there's a lot going on for Tennessee offensively that's giving defenses a lot of problems. But then again, you flip the page, you got Kirby Smart. Yep. In my mind, one of the best defensive minds in the country. Probably in the top 2 between him and Coach Saban. They're probably the 2 great minds defensively. I just think between those 2, it's going to be a chess match of Kirby's defense versus Tennessee's offense.
Now, see, Coach, it's funny you mentioned that because I thought it was going to be, and I had done a previous show about why Tennessee's offense was so good, and just being able to expound on those exact same things that you talked about. But I thought in flip terms, the Georgia offense against the Tennessee defense, for some reason, Georgia doesn't get any, their season has, with the exception of the Oregon game, it's almost like people forgotten how good Georgia is, so, but their defense, even though they don't have all the, the big names, they still got that culture. And something about Tennessee's defense, they kind of, I've seen them, I don't want to say go soft, but they got some. They give up a lot of points too. So tell me how you think how do you think that tempo deal for them affects the rest of their defense, because their defense got to come back on the field.
You talking about the Georgia defense or Tennessee's defense?
Tennessee's offense and Tennessee's defense. Does that offense affect their defense, because they got to come back? As I don't want to say I think that I think that that's where Georgia is going to have to win the game against Tennessee's defense.
Right.
What's your thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, I think defenses are at a disadvantage from a standpoint. If you're in tempo, and I'm a tempo guy, it's what I've always believed.
Yep.
And the times I've gotten away from tempo, I think our point production has gone down when we try to outthink ourselves. But I think the tempo part of it, from a defensive standpoint, and I know Kirby knows this, I know Tennessee's coaches know this, you have to play more defensive people, because those guys are going to get tired.
That's right.
Because of the fast pace. But the key to fast-paced offense, as well as I do, is conversions on third down. And
That's right.
So if you can convert at a high rate on third down, you keep their defense on the field. There's more snaps that tire the defense out. And so to me, the keys to the game are Georgia's defensive substitution to sub in some of their really, their players, to give their number one player some rest, because it's going to be a 4-quarter ball game. So the key to me is defensive substitution on Georgia's defense. That's number one. Number two is what nobody's talking about is Georgia's offense versus Tennessee's defense. Mm-hmm. I really believe that Georgia has the ability to go score a lot of points. And now have they had that guy that can take the top off the coverage? No, they have not had that guy. Now, will they get that guy back this week? The guy that beat Alabama in the national,
the Mitchell kid, yes.
The Mitchell kid. If he has a big day vertically, it's going to play huge for Georgia winning the football game. And I'll just go ahead and say it right now. I think Georgia does win the game. I do, just because they've been in some big games.
Yeah.
Their staff has been in some big games. Yeah. And I think when it all boils down to it, that means experience in those games, especially at the quarterback position, gives you somewhat of an advantage. So I think it's going to be a close ball game. I think it's going to be a hard-fought ball game. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored to a certain extent. But, man, Georgia's been really good at home in the past couple of years now. They have really been really good at home. So it's hard to pick against Georgia. It really is. Now, if Tennessee comes out in the first three possessions and they put 14 to 17 points on the board, that may change my thought process pretty quick. So they go out there and they're up and down the field and doing the same thing to Georgia as they did to Alabama. Look out, because not only do they beat Georgia, they probably will win the national championship if they do that. Now, if they've done what they did to Alabama's defense, turn around and do it to Georgia's defense, who else is going to beat them? I don't see anybody on their schedule can beat them until the SEC championship. Anything can happen there. It's based on what Alabama does next week. But the winner definitely in the championship on the east side. There's no question of that. Where in the West, it's not decided. It's not decided for 2 more weeks.
Now, it's funny you mentioned that, because and good to see you, Coach Chapman. Coach Chapman, I got a special friend, living legend on with us, Coach. Last time the three of us were together, we were down in Moultrie playing Coach Prost.
Yep.
And you having to deal with that monster offense he had, and defense he had, and I had to deal with that offense with those monsters. So the three of us together, boy, you talk about some classic time.
Yep.
Yeah, man. I remember they had 2 guys that played defensive tackle that like 95 and 92. They both weighed about 300 pounds.
Yeah, Pittman and Parrish. Yeah, I remember them like
yes.
Pittman and Parrish, they were two big guys. Actually, the Pittman boy got hurt about week 4, and he was out about 6 weeks with a broken ankle type deal. But he came back for the playoffs, and we made a run for it in 13. I think that was 13 is what you're talking about.
Yes, or 12.
Yes,
was
it
it
was.
13? Okay.
It was.
Yep. It was 13, I think, but it could have been 12 too, because they both played back-to-back years.
Oh wow. Okay, so just being able to and Craig, you came in. Coach was talking about. We had already started dabbling in, and he started talking about some things about Tennessee and what they do well, and a great synopsis about the SEC as a whole, how the East and the West have changed a little bit and gotten better. But he was just just jumping in the water about talking about Georgia's offense against Tennessee's defense, which I had said, if there's a key to the game, what is it that Georgia's going to be able to do to Tennessee's defense, because they've had to bend a little bit, and I don't know if they are that sturdy group of, can they really put some muscle down on the Georgia offense? And Coach alluded to the substitutions and how that works in the game on the defense side of the ball. So I think he was going down the right road. Craig, what's your thoughts on that Georgia offense against that Tennessee defense?
Well, I mean, Georgia's not going to go in and be scared of Tennessee. I don't care what they're doing on offense. But if they, I bet if they had their preference, they would run the football effectively, keep Tennessee's offense sitting on the sideline, involve Bowers and Washington in the passing game and eat up some clock and run over those guys and put some pressure on them so they felt like they had to score every time. They just about scored every time against Alabama, so it is what it is. But if you're Georgia, you're trying to punish them defensively and eat up clock.
I think that's a great point. Alabama struggled running the football for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think, they try to it's hard to get in a shootout with Tennessee. If you're going to try to shoot it out, I mean, one of the, Dejon Edwards played for me at Georgia. I mean, at Colquitt, he was a 3-year starter for me. He started through 9th grader. He was a rotational back as a 9th grader. So it's not surprising, in his 10th grade year and his 11th grade year, he just kept getting better and better as a running back at Colquitt County. And of course, I was gone senior year, but, I think Dejon is giving them, somebody that has got some size in their run game, a bigger back that can get the tough 4 and 5 yards. And I think how Dejon plays on Saturday will have a lot to do with Georgia's success versus Tennessee's defense. I think, like you said, the way you stop their offense is keeping them off the field by running the football, eating up clock, and just an old-fashioned, But is Georgia is Todd Monken? Is he going to do that? How much will he can you commit to the run if you go down 2 scores? So the panic button for Georgia cannot set in too early. And I think that's where experience comes in. Kirby's been in some big games in the last 3 or 4 years.
Right.
Tennessee has not. But I could see Tennessee going out 14-0 early. I could see that, because you ain't seen that kind of speed or that kind of athleticism at their 3 wide receivers. Yeah. Their best receiver didn't even play against Alabama.
That's right, Tillman.
So you throw in him, and they get their secondary back. They got 2 starters that didn't play against Alabama in the secondary that are back, that are really good. So, Tennessee's coming in as healthy as they've been the whole year. But I think if Kirby don't panic, Monken don't panic, and stick with the run game, they'll minimize the damage that Tennessee can cause. And you've got to be able to run the football and convert on 3rd down, because if you don't, and Tennessee gets back on the field, you're going to get too far behind. So I think that's the key to the game, is being able to run the football and keep Tennessee's offense off the field, because I expect Tennessee to come out firing early and do some things that Georgia hadn't seen. And you can't simulate it in practice. You can say what you want, but you can't. I've talked to the coaches at Alabama, and I know those guys, you know, with that fast pace, you can practice it all you want, but it's just different when you get in the game. So I think if they'll just not get behind too much early and can control the run game, then I think they'll be okay down the stretch run.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I thought, and I want to got a question that came in. A person had a question talking about the key to getting pressure on Hooker. I'm back to talking about the defense. I want to share this with you both, you guys, in watching it, breaking down Hendon Hooker. There's something. One thing I noticed, guys, is when he scrambles to run. He doesn't scramble to throw. I think that's a really important deal for where they are and the pressure that I think I believe Kirby is going to bring pressure because maybe he's found that out as well, watching him against Bama and everybody else. He doesn't scramble to throw as Bryce Young does. He scrambles to take off and run. I want both of you guys' thoughts on that. Craig, I'll start with you first, then you next, Coach.
If you're scrambling and stepping up and moving and you're not keeping your eyes down the field, you're taking away the possibility for a big play. Now, I've seen Hooker play. I know what he can do running the football. But if you're going to turn this into a step up in the pocket and run down the field, you know, you have to ask yourself, how much pressure are you going to bring if you're Georgia? All right. How much man coverage are you going to play if you're Georgia? Because if he turns and starts running and everybody's chasing receivers, that could be a big problem. You know, and if you're Tennessee, how much do you want him to do that? And how many hits do you want him to take?
Yeah.
So, you know, there are positives and negatives on both sides of that. You know, he takes the wrong hit, you're looking at another quarterback in the game. He catches you in man coverage with everybody chasing receivers, the scoreboard flips. So, I mean, it's going to be one of those things where I'm certain that the type of score in the situation is going to dictate what they do, and the ability of the front to get pressure, you know, without blitzing. So that's going to be a huge key to how Georgia defends Hooker. All right, I don't know if they'll spy him or any of those things, but I mean, I'm sure all of those defensive possibilities are on the table for Kirby and company in Athens.
What's your thoughts, Coach Prost?
The one thing that's hard to do against harder than any other team I've seen in a long time, it's hard to get pressure right at them because Alabama could not. And Alabama has elite pass rusher and Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. I mean, really good. And the other one ain't too bad either. They could not get any pressure with four hands on the ground, with four people, because what Tennessee does that nobody else does in the country is their splits with their offensive line is only about 6 to 10 inches. So they're bunched up in there.
They're foot to foot, almost.
Just about. And that's what Art Briles used to do. And with that, they have to work on edge pressure. And so what they do with the width of the receiver and the running back flare stuff, you know, you better be really, really, really good at edge pressure and knowing how to cover down on some of that stuff because it can give up big chunk yardage. I know Alabama was scared to blitz. I know that. Now, Kirby, I think hard on the other end of it, will study that tape hard. I'm sure he's talked to some things over with people, and I know he'll come up when it's what they call exotic blitz packages that Tennessee's not seen that will be different, and he'll use them in the right time. But to just come in and say, I'm going to blitz Hooker, I think that's a big mistake to sit there and bring in 5 and 6 man pressure because it won't be a 10-yard gain or a 15-yard gain. It'll be house calls. And I think that's the thing that concerns him the most is, you know, if you're going to blitz him, you better blitz him off the edge, and you better be smart with what you're doing with it. And I think he will. But Coach Smart will come up with some things that are, like I said, that Tennessee has not seen that he's probably held all year long.
Wow, that's a profound both of you guys, because I thought about it. How would I defend what Tennessee does? And it's just amazing how I have watched all these teams play Tennessee, And when those receivers, when they go 2-by-2, coaches, and those guys are past the numbers about 3.5 feet away from the sideline, I'm watching how everybody tries to play press man on that receiver on the line.
That's right.
And it's crazy because that's the dude that's running 10, and then he's going to hit either the hard slant, or he's the guy that's going straight to the seam, quick skinny seam, or straight to the post. But it's the other receiver, the number 2 receiver, who's off the line, who pauses and then just streaks down the sideline, and people are chasing those kids, those receivers in man coverage. And then you have whoever it is, if it's a backer, if it's a nickel, and you have them trying. I don't understand why people are not just saying, why can't we have a 4 shell and just keep everything in front of us? I don't know. I've been toying with that because watching that offense from Tennessee, sometimes running the ball, I've seen teams with 5 in the box on defense stop them, and they got 7. What's your thoughts on that, Coach Probst? And I've seen that happen a couple of times. But then the next play, they throw deep, and it's a touchdown. What do you think first with you, Coach?
First of all, it's a numbers game to start with. I mean, and Georgia may get by with playing 5 in the box, or basically if it's on the hash, they may get by what I call 5.5 in the box, where there's an overhang close, where the ball's on the hash. Georgia wants the ball on the hash. Trust me when I tell you, from a defensive perspective, Georgia wants the ball on the hash, because now they can have some insurance with the overhang from the boundary. They can play box, they can overshift some things and force Tennessee into some things, into the boundary, because you want them to throw into the boundary, basically based on how you set your defense. But if I'm Georgia, I want Tennessee on the hash as much as I can get them, which that's where most of the games played anyway.
Correct.
But here's the issue too that I see all the time, because I've been breaking down a lot of college tape in the last several weeks. And I watch. So when you press the point of those wide receivers, I mean, they're 2 to the right, 2 to the left, they're really out there. You're pressing the point. Well, 9 times out of 10, the number 2 receiver, once he goes and he attacks downfield and he's on the safety, and let's just say he runs post ball.
Right.
The stack by number 2 receiver that's not on the line of scrimmage releases, and he runs post ball and takes a safety with him. Well, guess what? That guy's playing press coverage on number 1 has no help. And so if he gets beat, there's no help. So right. what the stack does a lot of times is it puts a lot of pressure on the nickel, because the corner, usually when corner's in press, out of a 2 shell, he has help. Now sometimes he don't.
Right.
But I've seen that a lot this year, where I've seen the guy getting pressed, all of a sudden he's running down the middle field because he just beat the guy off the press, and the safety's gone with the number 2 guy. I've seen that a bunch this year, and that puts a lot of pressure on you too. And I know that's Art Briles' thing too, because here's what you got to understand about Tennessee's offense. They'll call a play. Right. I went out to Baylor for 3 straight years. I studied the Baylor offense for 3 years, and I liked it. And I grew up in the air raid, and so it's a mix. What I do is between both of them. But what Baylor did is such a great job. But what Tennessee's doing, they'll call a play, but based on what the secondary is doing, they convert. Everything is a conversion route for them. Wow. So based on where the safety is, whether he's inside leverage, outside leverage, where the nickel is, all that stuff predicates what they actually do. Right. And get this, they're so good at conversion post snap. So when the ball is snapped based on what the defense does, they've got answers for that. Now that's huge. And if you can do that and do that successful, then you really, and if the quarterback's on the same page with you, which they are, then that puts you in a huge bind, and because they'll call a play, let's call it Z-pop.
Right.
and all of a sudden you line up something that they don't like, Z-pop. Then so they change it. Or they go Z-pop and they like it, and the ball snap, and then the safety rotates, or they run 3-row or 2-row. They convert that route. That route changes from Z-pop to Z-corner or Z-dig or Z-stop. So they have like 3 different answers right there to help them with their conversion route. Trust me when I tell you, Tennessee's got a tremendous offensive scheme, just like Briles did when he was at Baylor. He was genius, really. And it's hard to defend now, very hard to defend.
It's funny you mentioned that, because there are people just talking about it now, just talking about that tempo and things, how things happen, and want to shout out to all the coaches and fans of the game that are watching. I told you all sports fans, I was going to bring some guys on that know this stuff. I know everybody sits at the couch and coach football, but I'm just bringing it. I'm giving you the butter. I'm getting the butter from the duck tonight from 2 great guys that I love, and Coach Prost and Coach Craig Chapman, my brothers from another mother. So Anthony Gates, Coach Gates, had a question. He made a comment talking about Tennessee's offensive tempo is going to cause a lot of problems for Georgia, and the defensive linemen will be the key. What are your thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Craig, and then Coach Prost, I want you to add in as well.
Well, if I'm playing Georgia, I'm doing everything I can to get to the ball and catch them before they line up. I want to make sure that I keep them. First of all, I want to make sure I try to run them into the ground for the most part on their defensive front. I want them to be tired.
Now, this is Georgia's offense, right?
What's that?
You saying Georgia's offense or Tennessee's offense?
If I'm Tennessee, I'm trying to make sure I keep it up tempo. I want that front, those down guys, I want them struggling mid-second quarter.
Gotcha.
I want snap after snap after snap. And that would be the way I approached it. I'm trying to get run as many plays as fast as I can, limiting, and it could be a thing where you call, if you have a 5-play stretch where you don't want to change your personnel so they can't change. You're wanting to snap it and keep them on the field. And you're going to have your, burst play. So if you get a first down, you're going to be right back up on the ball. And here comes a quick screen, here comes something, little dart zone, things like that. Something where it's an easy thing that you've done since spring practice, but now they're having to put their hand in the ground again. They're having to figure out, where they're at, where they line up, and you're getting it and going. And the cumulative effect of that as the game goes on is what you're looking for. And Coach Gates is right. If Tennessee can hold on to the football, and if they can keep, if they can run it at that tempo that they want to play at, things that are 3 yards in the first quarter or 6 yards in the second quarter or 12 yards in the third. So, that would be my concern if I was Georgia's defensive, staff. Got to get them off the field. Can't let them stack play after play after play after play, which is what Alabama did to them in the SEC championship game. If you remember, they kept getting first downs, and they had Georgia's front gassed. But Georgia hadn't had to face anything like that all year at that point in time. So it'll be, like I said, it's going to be one of those things. Georgia wants to keep their offense on the field to keep Tennessee's offense off the field. Tennessee wants to keep their offense on the field, not only to score, but to run Georgia's defense into the ground, from a conditioning standpoint.
Gotcha. That's a great point. Coach Prost, I want you to I got a message here from Coach Will, who talks about Darnell Wright, the Tennessee offensive lineman. I'm assuming that's the left tackle. Maybe that's the right tackle. No sacks allowed in the last 14 games. And Coach Prost, I remember hearing you talk about that edge pressure and that, that thing that you picked up on how close those tight splits were. So Coach Will is talking about how well Wright has done. But then he turned around and said that he dominated Will Anderson. So I want to let you speak on that, Coach Prost, because I know Will Anderson very well down here in this Dutchtown area. So I'm a little sensitive to that bragging right, but he got it. They didn't get it done. So I want you to talk about it, Coach. Will
He
Anderson
didn't.
came off that edge.
No, he didn't. He didn't. He was never a fact. I didn't know if he even played in the game.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
he didn't. He didn't. He was never. He was not a factor in the game. They did a great job with him. I think a lot of that has to do with tempo. I think that if you talk to Alabama probably today, as much as they wanted to substitute, they didn't. Their substitution patterns break down as the game got close. You want your best players in the game, but I'm telling you, subbing people, keeping people fresh will be the key to winning this game, especially on the defensive side. You've got to keep your people fresh. I used to tell my defense coordinators all the time when I was tempo all the time, man, you better get ready to play 24, 25, 26 kids. I said, because y'all going to be on the field because we're going to go fast and we're going to score. And then y'all going to be right back out there. Sometimes we're going to go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. We're not going to waste any time. You got to be right back out there. So you have to play more players. So I think there's a tug of war of between defensive coaches to keep your best players on the field versus subbing your players to where they got rest and they're not dead dog tired like you saw Georgia last year in the SEC championship game. Man, they couldn't even rush in the fourth quarter. They were so gassed. And I think go back to the Falcons versus the Patriots in the Super Bowl that year. Same situation. So the key to me to Georgia's defense has been able to sub people in and out and being able to play a second unit, maybe not all at one time, but being able to play a whole defensive front for a series, regardless of what you think. Well, we're not as good, but Georgia's recruited so well. Their number 2 unit's going to be pretty good now. So they just going to have to play them. And again, and I go back to my original thought, when it's all the smoke clears, I think Georgia wins the game because I think Georgia can control the ball by running the ball. And then the kid that played for me, Dejon Edwards, I think if he has 100 yards rushing, Georgia wins that game.
And Coach, I didn't even know that the Edwards kid was that good. I mean, I just, that's the amazing part of what, Kirby does at Georgia. They everybody, it used to be, and I think you would agree, both y'all would agree back. It used to be Alabama just, they stacked 5 and 4 stars and they just had to wait their turn to go play. But Georgia's doing the same thing. Kirby I didn't even know who these backs were. I only knew about McIntosh. I knew about Milton, and I didn't pay that much attention to these other kids because the whole glory was talking about how great the Georgia defense was last year, which it was. Couldn't take one away from it. The best ever in collegiate football as a unit, front 7 definitely. But to watch people watch them play this year, Jalen Carter hasn't played every game this year. Now he gets a chance to come back this game, but they have lost Nolan Smith. Okay, out for the season. I want both of you all to expound on how big that is. I know for me as a defense coordinator, I tell you that Nolan Smith is a guy that I do special things with, and he's just not a guy with his hand in the dirt, but he can play in space, and he can, I can disguise some coverage stuff because I can have him drop at the last minute. But with him not being in the game, that's a problem for me. If I'm coaching the Georgia Bulldogs, that's a problem. I want you guys' thoughts on that and how that tilts the game or the defense for Georgia. I want to hear from you first, Coach Pro.
I think losing Nolan, I really do, because I think experience. I think he's a leader. I think he's a great football player. Anytime you lose a great football player, you're going to hurt. There's no doubt about it. But again, just like we said earlier, next guy up at Georgia, they've recruited so well. So, the guy that's going to play there, although he may not be as experienced as Nolan Smith, he'll still be pretty good. Here's another key thing to this game, guys, is that how well does Kirby disguise what he's doing? I know Tennessee can convert based on what it does post snap. I get all that. That's still tougher to do. And guys package will be a huge plus for Georgia if they can do a good job of disguising really what they want to do after the ball snap.
Right.
I breaking down college tape over the last 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks for me. I've seen a lot of that, and
Right.
and it really messes people up, and if you not sharp on your conversion routes, now Tennessee is hitting on all cylinders and they're doing a good job of that, then they'll be fine. But if not, get chaos. I think the chaos. I just got a lot of.
Well, I will say this much. What I've learned is that, and for me on the defense side of the ball and getting a chance to watch Tennessee and Chapman, Craig, I was saying this before you came on. It's just me and Coach Prost talking, and for me, I've always been cover zero, and then even when we played Coach Prost when he was down in South Georgia, it was cover zero, and we dared to have to deal with, we dared people to throw the football. Well, on the collegiate end, it is a little different because people can really, really play, and everybody got great players. But Paul Malone here made a great point in one of the comments. We was talking about back when Bama played and how they had a safety covering their fastest receiver, which blew his mind. And that sounds that exactly Coach Prost alluded to that earlier when he was talking about those matchups outside those numbers and those space dangerous stuff that was going on. For me, what do you think would be a great disguise? For me, I'm going to show a shell 4 look. I'm going to show a shell 4 look pre-snap read because I want them to see that, I want them to have a second of doubt of what we're in. And it's just what you, Coach Prost was talking about. Show something different. Maybe Kirby can show something different. And then when the play starts, all heck breaks loose. Tell me your thought, Craig, on that.
I know that they were talking about coming in, and coach was talking about playing it on the boundary. All right, so you want to, Georgia wants the ball on the boundary. And Coach Prost did this to us was bringing guys from the short side out of the secondary. So, you just talked about losing Nolan Smith, who, if I heard correctly this morning, was Georgia's leading. He led the team in sacks. So, being able to disguise whatever coverage you're in, whatever defense you're in, however it is, and bringing people from different areas. So, like you said, you were a cover 0 4 shell, but, there were a lot of times where you called cover 4.
Correct.
And that defense, as Coach was talking about with route reads and things of that nature, it went from cover 4 to cover 0 by the nature of the route that someone ran. They talk about Tennessee trying to get, wide receivers on safeties. Georgia's going to try to get their mismatches too by the way they disguise and where they bring their pressure from. That's why football, is a great thing. They're going to see who they want to attack up front, what running backs in the game, who struggles with protections. All right. If the quarterback doesn't pay attention to the short side of the field, if he's really, whatever, they're going to find it. They're going to have a plan going in of how they want to attack. Now, like we always said, what happens when you get hit in the mouth? What do you do from that point on? How do you make an adjustment? What do you do to give yourself the advantage? So, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, what's Tennessee going to do to try to get a mismatch with a receiver on a safety? What's Tennessee going to try to do? We get a mismatch with a running back on a linebacker out of the backfield. How's Georgia going to overload one side and get clean? All right. Mm-hmm. So it'll be fun to watch this Saturday afternoon. I know, college football season is winding to the close, man. We got to get all of it in we can right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is.
Coach Prost, go ahead and tackle that thought, because I feel bad. I didn't give enough time to some of that punishing stuff that Georgia's offense can do. I was so worried, like everybody else, I guess, talking about how to stop Tennessee's defense. But your thoughts on what those things that can happen, to help Georgia offensively against Tennessee's defense?
I think it's, they're good against the run now. That's one thing Tennessee's held up pretty good is against the run. Now, obviously, who have they played that are a great run offensive football team? Where Alabama's not bad at it, but and in LSU too. I mean, the thing here, it's not what Tennessee did to Alabama. It's what Tennessee did to LSU and Baton Rouge. That game was never even a game.
Yeah,
Blown out early in Baton Rouge. Now, which would concern me a little bit, but I think Georgia's got to establish and play with multiple tight ends, which they will,
right.
and control the clock, control the ball, multiple backs, throw the ball to tight end, because they got great tight ends. If Bowers don't have 8 to 10 targets and Washington don't have 7 to 8 targets, and to me, now, you want to take a shot downfield on Mitchell. Everybody, you're going to do that. But I think and this is an old coach's cliche, but probably, turnovers will be a factor, but probably more than anything will be third down conversions. And the team that can get close to 60% will win the game. When it's all said and done, if turnovers are equal,
wow, the
team that converts the most on third down offensively will be the team that wins the game.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that along with the turnovers and penalties, of course, I
hope the officials stay out of it. Lord of mercy, I've seen too many flags. My goodness, but I mean, I hope they stay out of it. And it's if there's 3 or 4 penalties against Georgia, 3 or 4 penalties against Tennessee, and let them play.
Well, I'm hoping that's what will happen. I want to move to, as we wind down here, talk about the uncommon key players to the game. And I worded it as such because, what parts of the game do you guys think, or what players can be very crucial parts of the game? That flipping the field, that special teams part of flipping the field. How does Tennessee look starting inside their own 5 and starting inside their own 10? But some key players to the game. You guys' thoughts on some people that maybe nobody's looking at enough that could be crucial parts of this game. Of course, we already know about Nolan Smith not being there. That is a big name, but some key players to the game that you think will be pivotal this Saturday. Coach Prost, I'll start with you then, Craig.
I just think special teams. I mean, I don't know their personnel well enough to know, but I just know, each punter. Yeah. I mean, it's a given the field goal kickers have got to be 2 for 2 or 3 for 3 or 1 for 1. I mean, you can't afford to miss a field goal in this ball game that are relatively ones that you should hit. Now, I mean, if you should out and trying to kick a 59-yarder, I get that, but
right.
But I think the punters have got a lot. I mean, whoever's punter can pin fields and pin them deep and make you go distance. And then, of course, punt returns. I mean, kickoff returns are about non-existent nowadays. So punt returns, and, a punt block or, and I think Georgia may have an edge in the punt block deal, maybe. So, and that's always a key thing. I mean, there's an old stat, as coaches used to say, if you block a punt and return it for a touchdown, or you return a touchdown off a punt, or like if you score in special teams, that team's going to win about 75% of the time.
Right.
And so I can't name a player,
gotcha.
Tennessee's punt return guy or Georgia's punt return guy, but that'll be huge in the ball game and how well they punt it. And how well they protect on both sides of the ball, because that's and here's the other thing. In a big game, think about this, in a big game, and I always believed this when I was coaching, how do I steal a possession? How do you steal a possession? That's a key. Whoever can steal a possession is huge. Whether that's like you said, blocking a punt,
right.
onside kick, turnover, something that's out of the ordinary. It gets you an extra possession, that puts you in a better chance to win.
Wow. Great point. I like that. Craig, what are your thoughts?
A couple of things. The weather's going to be really nice, but it might be a little warmer than it's been a couple of Saturdays.
Yep.
So they're going to have to make sure, that they're hydrated well and all that stuff. Plus, one of the things that keeps coming back to me is I was at Georgia Southern when Tennessee and Alabama played, and all I could see was McKinstry messing up that punt. And coach was talking about returns and blocking punts and getting stealing a possession. One of the things that Georgia, they've dropped the ball a couple of times on punts this year. So McConkey's going to have to be, he does a great job in the return game. He's got to be sure-handed when he catches it. That's been an issue a couple of times this year. But like Coach was saying, you're going to have to be nails on field goals. All right, if you run the field goal team out there, the process has got to be pure, and you got to make the kick, because that, you talk about stealing a possession. If you swing and miss, all right, and they get it back on there, it's like playing make it take it in basketball. That's the way everybody plays us in basketball anyway. So,
well, I tell you what, Coach Pros, I probably didn't word it properly. I should have said key plays to the game, because last I just remember when we went down at Lovejoy, we went down to Moultrie in 2012, and Coach Pros hit us with that the tight end.
He was tying a shoe.
Yeah. He caught us with that at Coach Pros. I'm still getting therapy on in that play. I thought I had you shut out, but I'm still having therapy on that play. So I thought you were going to mention it, Coach, because if there was one or two teams that would try something out of the ordinary, Coach Pros, and then Craig, Coach, who do you think it would be between the two teams? Some type of trick play, or which one of the two teams you think would go to something that they haven't done all year?
Tennessee.
Okay.
I'm thinking Tennessee. That their whole offense most of the time looks like a trick play. So, they're going to line up in every formation known to man. You better know who's lined up where. They muddle huddle or anything like that. You're fixing to get somebody lined up on the line, in tight at a tackle that's eligible. So you're going to have to be able to identify quick and stuff like that. That's what that offense is all about. And they've been doing it since they were at UCF. So, that's one of the things.
Coach Pros, what do you think? Which team do you think will come out with something just truly unexpected?
Well, Tennessee probably, like Coach said. They're 9-point underdogs. So they probably feel like they've got to steal a possession. They got to do something, some type of trick play that can hurt them. But go back to the Alabama-Tennessee game. Alabama wins the ball game if they don't screw that dang deal up on the punt. If that ball don't touch that player, or he don't try to pick it up, because they scored a touchdown on that. So, it's just something bizarre in the special teams like that, you touch it or you fumble it, like Coach said, or you get a return or a block kick. Those are going to be huge factors in this ball game. I'm anxious to see is Tennessee for real. I think they are. But we're fixing to find out, because I know Georgia is built their program and their culture is set, and Kirby's been there now for 6 years, maybe. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. It's in their sixth, or this is seventh year?
I think it's 6th year, maybe.
He got there in 16, so that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. No, it's his seventh year. Yeah, it's his seventh. So, he's been there 7 years, and he's got a culture. He's recruited extremely well. He's got good coaches. I think you can't argue with his success. You really can't. I think he's done a great job there, and let's face it. Tennessee, this is their first hurrah, and man, I'll tell you something. I remember some of my first hurrahs. They didn't go very well.
Coach, I've still got therapy. Like I said, I won't say it after this no more. But my next head coach's spot, I had to make sure that my coaches understood that we had the pro special, that we had to make sure we defended from the defensive side of the ball because of that. The trips you put on, us trips to the right, and the tight end was lined up as a tackle as the left tackle. So that's called the pro special. So Anthony Gates, who's been on here talking, Coach Gates with us tonight. He's my defensive coordinator back when I was at Mount Zion. That there was the pro special. He said, and then the funny thing, he would say, well, Coach, the team we playing, I didn't see them run it. I said, I don't care. Coach Prost ran it.
But you go back and my first year at this place or my first year at that place, and we were pretty good. We were on a run. Like in 2010, we get the state championship game, and we couldn't stop them. They beat us. We had 685 yards of offense, and I think it's still a state record in the state championship game, and we get beat. Them first years. I mean, like I was at Valdosta, we're rolling in the playoffs. We go to Carrollton, beat them in the quarterfinal. Probably shouldn't have beat them, but we did on the road. We go to Buford the next week, and they beat the mess out of us. So, those first time deals when you hadn't been there long enough to establish a culture yet. Now, granted, Tennessee's excited. They're excited, but I don't think anybody in the Tennessee coaching staff will tell you that they're deep with great players. I don't think they're deep with great players. I think Georgia's deep with a lot of great players.
Amen. That's very profound. I agree totally. I see got another comment here, and we're going to be winding down here with that last question about your predictions. So I want you to think about those, what you all think about that and your predictions of the score. But Cindy Reed said, and thank you for joining, Cindy, I don't think Tennessee will carry this stick like they have this year beyond this year. Well, I tell you what, Cindy, I can't speak, and the coaching side of me can't speak for next year, but I can tell you what's happening this Saturday. And they got a big stick. And Cindy Reed, they got a big stick this year. I can't speak for next year. But, in the coaching realms, I know kids will enjoy what Tennessee is doing. You got Rodney Garner up there, the guru defensive line coach. You got Willie Martinez up there, Coach Banks, and some other coaches. So you got some guys that know what they're doing, I guess is what I'm saying, Cindy. So, They ain't new at this. So I think Tennessee might be for real for a little while. So, and I don't know. What do y'all think? She also, she said they're going to lose that 25-year-old quarterback. And what y'all think before y'all giving y'all predictions? Is this real? I know, Coach, Coach Prost, you kind of alluded to it. You want to see if this is a real deal, or is this kind of like, you didn't say it exactly like that, but I think it sounds like that's what you're leaning on. Is this the real deal? Are they real?
No, I think Tennessee's only going to get better. I don't think this is Tennessee's best football team. I think Tennessee's best football team is coming because they're recruiting at a high level right now. And like I said a few minutes ago, I don't think anybody on that Tennessee coaching staff thinks they're deep with really great players all across every position. No, they're not. I mean, you can't turn that thing around as quick as they went into a bad situation.
Right.
And the transfer portal really just drew them down near nothing last year. So in my opinion, I think Tennessee's on the verge of being really good for quite some time. And it's because of stability and they're recruiting very good right now. And I think they'll end up in the top. They may end up in the top 7-6 in the nation in recruiting.
Wow. What do you think, Chat? What do you think?
I mean, college football is so fickle now because you used to get you'd follow somebody's recruiting process, and then you'd see them as a redshirt freshman, and you'd look forward to their redshirt freshman year, and then watching them grow and seeing them play 3, 4, 5 years for your team. Now, you may have some guy playing at BYU right now that's going to be playing at Tennessee next year.
Absolutely.
Because of the transfer portal. So how can you say that it's not something that's going to be, sustainable, because their quarterback that's playing right now didn't start at Tennessee. Their backup quarterback didn't start at Tennessee. You know, if you're looking at it from that point, no, they went out and got two guys that they thought would help them that could run the system that Heupel wanted to run. So if you don't think they wouldn't do it again to go out and get somebody, I mean, he's obviously identified what it takes to be successful in his offense. All right. And if you're looking at that and you watch it, it looks like it's a whole lot of fun to play in. So why would you not want to play in it? I mean, and you've already got you couple that with the fact that they beat Alabama this year for the first time in,
15 years.
16 or 17 years.
Yep.
Because of 17 penalties.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to say it. I'm just talking about from a person's perspective looking at it. You're looking at it right now going, they've got things going.
Right.
They got the right coach in here. He turned it around. You get a bowl game last year, and now you're sitting there undefeated, and you're ranked number 1 in the first college football playoff ranking. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't continue unless they just, do something, incredibly uncharacteristic for what they've done, because they were successful at UCF.
Yeah,
it wasn't like that. I mean, this is not like this is a one-off event for them. They've done it. Now the stadium's changed, the uniforms changed, and the people on the other side, it's not Tulsa and SMU, and Cincinnati. Now it's UGA and Florida and Alabama and Auburn and, whatever. And last week it was Kentucky. It'll be LSU, or it was LSU earlier this year. But it seems like they've got this thing figured out pretty well. So I don't see why we can just say that just because people are leaving, people are going to leave every year. Georgia's whole defensive front just about left last year. Everybody told me all summer they're not going to be as good defensively.
That was a lie.
Okay. It looks like it's pretty good to me.
They are. And you look at Ole Miss. I mean, you look what Lane Kiffin did in the transfer portal. They've got like 18 new players there. I mean, he did a phenomenal job in the transfer portal. And I think it's got Ole Miss with, at 8-1 or, and I think that it's the same situation. I think Tennessee's here to stay, and I'm going to tell you why. Number one, kids want to play. If you're a receiver, quarterback, running back, even an offensive lineman that wants to protect, you want to play at Tennessee. Right now, they've got the best offense in the country. Yes. They're the most sexiest offense out there. Every kid in the country, from California to the Eastern Coast to the tip of Miami to everywhere in Texas, wants to play or has thought about playing at Tennessee that may not have even thought about Tennessee. Because what I'm seeing on the recruiting boards last year, you didn't see the top players even have Tennessee in their top 5. That's now, all the players, especially offensive skill players, have got Tennessee ranked in their top 5. And so that comes with people are excited about playing that offense. I remember when we started the spread, when I went to Hoover in 99, we were the first team in Alabama to run the spread. And we were the first team in tempo in that state. And no one was running it. And people loved it. I mean, people loved it. The media loved it. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget this. I'll tell this quick story. I walk in a grocery store in the summer of 99 at Hoover. Never forget this. There's an 80-year-old lady walks up to me and says, "Coach, I'm so-and-so, and I want to ask you one question." She'd sort of done her research on me coming out of Mobile. We'd started a new school down there and had a lot of success. She said, "I want to know one thing. Are you going to run the ball 3 straight plays and then punt?" Or I told her, I said, "Ma'am, if you'll come to the game, we going to throw it 3 straight times." And she did. She bought her season tickets and she came and she sat up there and watched the game and it just caught people on fire and it caught the state on fire. And everything changed in that state because we had success winning so early that everybody else started changing to do that. Then I come to Georgia in 2008. And I don't know of anybody. Do y'all know of anybody in 2008 that was outside of Chip Lindsey going to Lassiter with Hudson Mason and us in South Georgia? We were the only 2 teams that spread the ball and throw it like we did. Now, especially with tempo. I know there was a team in Georgia at one time that had 4 really good wide receivers. Can't remember who they were.
Was that I can't I just
Henry County.
Henry County.
Maybe
Henry County sent guys to
Flowery Branch one year. And Flowery Branch.
Yeah, I remember somebody that had
Flowery Branch, maybe.
Yeah.
Flowery Branch, yeah.
And I remember very few people. I know in South Georgia, they would nobody spreading it and throwing
Right.
it.
Right.
And there was a few teams in the state. Now you go around Atlanta and everybody's in 10 personnel. Everybody's in 11 personnel. And I think that I reflect that back to Tennessee. Kids love that offense. They love fast tempo, throw the football, score a lot of points. And you say what you want to. Alabama's won a bunch of national championships. Georgia won it last year. Has a chance to win it again this year. But those kids see that offense. And if you're an offensive skill player or an offensive player in general, you're going to have Tennessee on your recruiting list. I promise you that.
Well said. Well said. I couldn't agree with you more. It's going to be amazing to see how at the first signing day, who's going to get flipped. Who's going to be the first to get flipped? Because,
No doubt.
that's going to be a big deal because, who's going to change their mind. And it's going to come down to these last couple of weeks, this last month coming up for them first kids that go. All right, fellas. So we're going to get down to the last question. And I want you guys, I gave you a little bit of time to think about who you thought your predictions on the game and had a lot of predictions come in and Coach Gates said that it was going to be upset alert. Tennessee's going to take it 38-31. Coach Gates said that, and Coach Gates down there at Griffin High School right now. Them Griffin Bears. Ooh-wee. Yeah, and let me see. Also, Paul Malone said that Georgia is going to be 42-38. Georgia is going to take Tennessee out. That's a lot of points there. So I'm going to start with both of you guys. Craig, I'm going to let you go first, and then, Coach, I want you to close it out, Coach Prost. But, Craig, go ahead first. Your prediction of the score of the game.
I'm going to go, as much as it pains me, UGA 38, Tennessee 35.
38-35, Georgia.
Yep.
Okay, that's going to be a win on the field goal. Is that coming down?
So.
Is it going to be close?
It's going to be close, man.
Okay, and you think that? So you think that Georgia is going to prevail and hit Tennessee in the mouth like they've never been hit before, or this season?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Coach Prost, your thoughts on the prediction of the score?
I think in big games like this, that the margin of error is really, really thin. I think the scoring opportunities will be very few. On average, I'd say Tennessee and Georgia each will have around 5 to 6 scoring opportunities. I don't think they'll score on all of them.
Wow.
So I'm looking at a lower score game than most people think. I'm looking at it like a 27-24 Georgia win is what I'm looking at. I just believe that the game is going to be tight. I think it's going to be hard fought. I don't know that there'll be as many points as now. If that thing gets in the upper 30s or 40s, or something like that, I could see Tennessee winning that kind of game. I just think Georgia's defense is going to come to play, and it's going to be a 27-24 game. I might go 31-28 Georgia. That'd be the most I'd go.
Oh, wow. Well, Coach, I'm kind of along the lines with you. I just don't think that I think that this is going to be a common stage for Georgia and their players to play in, especially up there in Athens. And I think it's going to be uncommon for what Tennessee is going to see and what Kirby's going to bring, the unknown that hasn't been seen. They're going to be different athletes on the field. And this time, when they have those special athletes on the field, such as when they played Alabama, they beat Alabama, but this time playing Georgia with their special athletes on the field, and so many of them, I think that it's going to be 31-28. I think it's going to be a field goal kick near the end of the game. I believe there's going to be a drive near the end of the game where Georgia, Stetson Bennett has to take that team down the field, because I just think that character element is going to pop up for those Bulldogs. I got to admit it. I just think that Kirby, and not having Nolan Smith play and the committee saying that Tennessee's number one, I think that just all plays right into Kirby's hands on, not that you need a more of a motivation, but y'all know what I'm saying.
I
He
do too.
knows he knows how to strike that thing up and make people though they gonna pin their ears back. I think there's gonna be some different hits on Hooker on Saturday. I just think he's gonna get some different hits. The
But
ones
you
that he
know,
hasn't gotten.
but as a football fan, y'all know who we need to win.
Who's that?
Tennessee needs to win. If you want 2 or 3 teams in the SEC in the college football playoff, if Tennessee beats Georgia,
Wow,
Georgia wins out. I still think Georgia goes because I think they're up there. I think because of how dominant they've been all year.
Gotcha.
That would put, if Alabama continues to win, it'd be Alabama, Tennessee in the playoffs or in the SEC championship. I think Alabama would beat them the second time with a healthier deal. And then you're looking at 3 teams right there with 1 loss. How do you leave all 3 of them out?
Woo! There it is. They dropped the mic on that one, Coach.
Hey, you know why? You know why I want to take? Because I want the college football playoffs to expand. And the only way it's going to expand, Tennessee got 1 loss, Georgia got 1 loss, Alabama got 1 loss, Ohio State beats Michigan pretty good, and TCU drops a game, Clemson drops a game. Then every commissioner across the country is going to be raising Cain to expand the playoffs.
That's what, man. I mean, I got to drop the mic on that because that is a fitting way to end the show because I think, Coach, you just hit it right on nail. You know, the nail on the head. You know, or head on the nail. God dog and hammer on the head. I'm just gonna go. You got me all jacked up on that one, Coach, because that's what's gonna happen. And I can't wait for you know, guys. Can we get together again and chop it up on this football talk? Because I just know that, you know, for Coach One Sports, with just being able to just talk it in a way that, you know, us that is on the field, been on the field, still on the field, and just like you're saying, Coach, about all the film that you break down and things like that, I know for a fact that, you know, to be able to sit and talk about this with the folks that want to know how we see it, it is a different, it's from a different point of view. And I agree that this is going to be exciting. And then guess what? Next week, there's going to be another exciting game in the SEC. And you already know what's going to come down to, just like you already mentioned it, Bama, Georgia, Tennessee. And guess what? Just when you thought it was safe to go in the water, Lane Kiffin going to pop up and do something. And then Napier's going to do something. So guess what? It's coming. And that's the beauty.
No, a lot of fun, Coach, because we need, I know Georgia fans are going to be mad when I say this, but we need Tennessee to win because I think Georgia's shown enough. If Tennessee wins a 1-point ball game and goes to Georgia, there's no way you can keep Georgia out of the college playoff. No way.
I got you.
There's no way. You've got to keep them in it. You're trying to tell me that TCU and Michigan are as good as Georgia? No, it ain't happening. And so Georgia's in. And if, you know, and then, so Tennessee goes to the SEC championship undefeated. Alabama gets them, then then all heck breaks loose. And I'm telling you, those 13 men in Grapevine, Texas, is going to have one hell of a dang job to do to try to keep all 3 of those 1-loss SEC teams out of the playoffs.
Wow.
They won't be able to. They won't be able to.
So do you think that they're gonna? Do you think, and we can end it off on this? Do you think that they will come to their senses and say, "Okay, all hell has broken loose, so maybe we can't wait as far down the road to start the widening the playoff field. Maybe we got to start like, you know, now.
It's got to start now because it's not fair for TCU to, if they do go undefeated." It's not fair to those 1-loss SEC schools because they played a tougher deal. But I'm just saying to you, I think, you know, it's just we got to get expanded. Here's what's happening, guys. Here's what's happening is the viewership in college football. We're excited here in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, but no one else in the country is excited. Ohio State, maybe Clemson, but everybody out in the Midwest, all that, they're not excited about college football. Check your TV ratings. When it gets to mid to late October, early November, people quit watching college football because their team is not in a playoff run. The NFL is. The NFL's got, 12, 14 teams to get in the playoffs. College football is screwed its own self by this 4-team playoff. They've got to change that immediately because they are losing their fan base late in the year. That's been proven. You know how many people? You know how many people watched the SEC? You know how many people watched the national championship last year? The lowest ever.
Really?
Georgia, Alabama. No one watched it, but Alabama, Georgia.
I didn't think about that.
They don't watch it. I mean, I'm just telling you, the saturation of Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and only 4 spots. First off, it ain't fair to the players. Number one. Number two is it's not fair to the fan bases. And if you sit there and go 10-1 and you're in the Big 12 or the Pac-12, you think Oregon's going to get in, losing 55-0 to Georgia? They're not getting in. And they could go 12-1, and they're not getting in. If I'm the Pac-12 commissioner, if I'm the Big 10 commissioner, and Michigan loses, say 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns to Ohio State, they don't get in. TCU goes undefeated, they don't get in. They're going to be all hell break loose. I promise you that.
And don't forget about USC out there. I think they got one loss, maybe. I think one loss.
One loss. UCLA's got 1 loss, but they play each other now. Now Oregon or USC could win out and only have 1 loss. One of them two could, or UCLA could.
Right.
But they got to win out. So I mean, it's just not fair. It's not fair to college football. It's not fair to the fan base. It's not fair to the players who bust their butt year round. They deserve to be in.
Wow. Well, I hope that the people that make those decisions, I hope there's some rumblings going on. And like you said, if all things work as you say, Coach Pros, I believe the cream gonna rise to the top, right, Chapman? That's my favorite line. The cream rises to the top.
Yep, it does. And don't be surprised too if Notre Dame don't beat Clemson Saturday night.
Whoa. Y'all heard it right here. Coach, I tell you what, doggone it, if that happens, because I got some co-workers that are, and I just want to tell you I tell you what, Clemson fans, hey, listen, I don't know what's happening there. I know you changed the quarterback, but Dabo said the kid that the DJ is going to get back to starting again, but doggone it, I tell you what, Clemson has had 10 lives, not 9.
That's right.
It's just amazing on the season. And shoot, I'm in agreement. Craig, I think you're in agreement too that this thing should expand, right?
Absolutely. I told Bo the other night that Georgia would beat Tennessee and then Alabama would beat Georgia, and there'd be 3 SEC teams sitting at one loss, and all 3 of them would make the college football playoffs. And he looked at me and said, "You're right." And I was like, hey, it's going to happen. It's going to happen because, whether anybody wants to hear it, that the fact of the matter is the best football in the country is played in the Southeastern Conference.
No question.
Now, that doesn't mean that every week it's going to look beautiful. There are going to be hiccups on everybody's record. But if you're honest with yourself, the best football in the country is played in the Southeastern United States.
It is.
And it's played there every Saturday.
That's right.
Well, I tell you what, fellas, it has been a joy for us to sit and talk this football roundtable. Please make sure that when you see me hit you up on the phone again, I'll be ready to talk about another situation like this. And I'm glad we were able to just talk about this wonderful game coming up Saturday. It's going to be a great one to watch. Terrell Owens always says, get your popcorn ready. And that's pretty much what it is. My wife be out of town, going back to her collegiate homecoming at North Carolina Central. So I have the house to myself, at least in my mind. I got my dogs. They'll be bothering me, but I'm going to sit down and watch this game at 3:30, fellas. And then I'm going to turn around and watch the Bama game later on down there in Death Valley, because that's going to be a barn burner too. But I just think that we have some great stuff to talk about later on how this thing works out. And Coach Pros, I've been dreaming about getting us together. Once again, I do have a pros. My defense coordinator has to understand to defend the pro special.
All right, man. I appreciate you having me on tonight, and Coach Devin, I appreciate you too, man. I appreciate us getting together, and we'll do it again.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you,
Thank
Coach
you, Coach.
Chapman, my brother from another mother. Thank you so much, sports fans. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe. Welcome, or good evening, should I say, to all the fun we've had talking football about Georgia against UT, University of Tennessee, and them Vols. It's going to be a big game at 3:30 on Saturday. Thank you so much for watching. Good evening. Have a great night.